At Christmas, my brother's family took my savings, saying, "No husband, no kids, no life, you're worthless." They nodded. I smiled and left. 3 months later, my voicemail was full of their pleas, but I'd moved on. Their betrayal made me stronger. Now I'm successful, and they're just echoes. My revenge is my triumph, and their calls mean nothing. So this happened last Christmas, and honestly, I'm still processing the whole thing. You know how family gatherings can be total disasters sometimes? Well, this one takes the cake, no cap. I'd been saving up for about 2 years to buy my own place. Nothing fancy, just a decent little condo where I could finally have some peace and quiet. Working double shifts at the hospital as a nurse, picking up weekend gigs, basically grinding 24/7 to make this dream happen. Had about 45 grand saved up, which felt like winning the lottery for someone like me. My brother Jake and his wife Sarah had been going through some rough times financially. Their mortgage was behind, credit cards maxed out, the whole 9 yards. I felt bad for them, especially with their 2 kids and all. But looking back, I should have seen the red flags flying higher than a 4th of July parade. Christmas Eve rolls around, and I'm actually excited to see everyone. Brought gifts for the kids, even got Jake and Sarah something nice despite knowing they were struggling. The whole family was there. Mom, Dad, my Aunt Linda, everyone crammed into Jake's living room like sardines in a can. Everything seemed chill at first. We're watching Home Alone for the millionth time. Kids are running around hopped up on sugar cookies. Typical holiday chaos. Then Jake pulls me aside after dinner, says he needs to talk privately. I'm thinking maybe he wants to apologize for being distant lately or something. Boy, was I wrong. We head to his garage and Sarah follows us out there. That's when things got weird real quick. Jake starts going on about how they might lose the house, how the bank's breathing down their necks, all this heavy stuff. I'm nodding along, feeling sympathetic when he drops the bomb. "Look, we know. You've got that money saved up," he says, looking me dead in the eye. And honestly, what are you even saving for? You're 32, single, no kids, living in that tiny apartment. What's the point? I'm like, excuse me, what now? But Sarah jumps in before I can even process what's happening. Jake's right. You don't have real responsibilities like we do. No mortgage, no kids to feed, no real life to worry about. That money would actually make a difference for us. The audacity hit me like a truck. But it gets worse. Jake then says they've been talking to Mom and Dad about this, and everyone agrees that I should help them out. Not loan, help. As in, just give them the money because apparently my dreams don't matter since I'm not married. With kids? Think about it logically, Sarah continues, crossing her arms. What are you going to do with a condo anyway? Fill it with cats? At least our kids would benefit from this. You're basically worthless without a family of your own. That word, worthless, just hung in the air like smoke from a grease fire. Tried to keep my cool, told them I'd been working my butt off for that money, that I had plans and dreams too. But Jake just shook his head like I was being selfish. Dreams? Come on, you're a nurse, not exactly climbing any corporate ladder. This money could save our house, keep our kids from being homeless. But sure, go ahead and be selfish about your little condo fantasy. Update. Hey Reddit, thanks for all the support so far. This story gets crazier. Trust me. I haven't even gotten to the part where they actually tried to access my accounts yet. Should I tell you about what happened when we went back inside to the family, or skip to the real drama? When we walked back inside, I was shaking. Not from cold, but from pure rage mixed with disbelief. The worst part? Mom and Dad were in on it. The moment we sit down, Mom starts in with this whole speech about family obligations and how I've always been independent, but now it's time to step up for family. Dad nods along like a bobblehead, adding how they raised me to be generous and caring. "Honey, you know we love you, but Jake and Sarah have real needs right now," Mom says, patting my hand like I'm 5 years old. "You'll find another way to save up. You always do." Aunt Linda even chimes in, talking about how in her day, unmarried women always helped their families because that's what good sisters do. The whole room is basically ganging up on me, making me feel like the villain for wanting to keep my own hard-earned money. The kids are playing with their new toys, completely oblivious to the adults basically plotting to steal their aunt's life savings. Part of me wanted to scream, to flip tables, to tell them all exactly what I thought. But instead, I just sat there, taking it all in. Jake pulls out his phone and starts showing me Zillow listings. "Look, there's tons of nice rentals in your price range. Why tie yourself down with a mortgage when you could have flexibility? We really need this money, and you'd barely miss it," Sarah adds. "Plus, if you ever do find someone to marry, you'll probably want to move in with them anyway." This is just practical. The manipulation was next level. They had this whole thing planned out, probably rehearsed their little speeches, made me wonder how long they'd been plotting this behind my back. Then Jake drops the real bombshell. He says they've already talked to their mortgage company about catching up on payments, that they told them help was coming from family. Essentially, they'd already counted my money as theirs. "We kind of already told them we'd have the money by New Year's," Sarah admits, not even looking ashamed. "So this really needs to happen." I asked them point blank what would happen if I said no. The look that passed between Jake and Sarah told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't a request, it was an ultimatum. Mom starts crying, saying how she doesn't want to see her son's family on the street. Dad gets all stern, talking about disappointment and family values. Aunt Linda mentions how my grandparents would roll over in their graves if they knew I was being this selfish. The guilt trip was Oscar-worthy, for real. But here's the thing, something inside me snapped. Not in an angry way, but more like clarity hitting me like lightning. I realized these people didn't see me as a person with my own goals and dreams. I was just a resource to be tapped when they needed something, so I smiled, just smiled and nodded. You know what? You're absolutely right, I said, standing up. I don't have a husband or kids, so clearly my dreams don't matter as much as yours. Everyone relaxed, thinking they'd won. Jake actually had the nerve to hug me and say I was doing the right thing. I'll need a few days to figure out the transfer, I told them. Bank stuff, you know how it is during the holidays. They were so relieved, so grateful, thanking me like I'd just donated a kidney. Sarah even posted on Facebook about what an amazing sister-in-law I was, talking about family sacrifices and love, but I had no intention of giving them a dime. I left that night and drove straight home, my mind racing faster than a NASCAR driver. On the final lap, sat in my Toyota Camry in the parking lot of my apartment complex for like an hour just thinking. The audacity of these people was unreal, but what hurt most was realizing my own family saw me as less than because I hadn't followed their cookie-cutter life plan. The next few days were quiet. Jake texted a couple times asking about the transfer, and I just said I was working on it. Meanwhile, I was actually working on something else entirely, an exit strategy. First thing I did was change all my banking passwords and security questions, added extra verification steps, the whole 9 yards. Then I started researching job opportunities in other cities. Turns out, experienced nurses are in high demand pretty much everywhere. By New Year's Day, I had 3 job offers in different states. I picked one in Colorado. Better pay, amazing benefits, and about 1,000 miles away from my toxic family. Update. Okay, Reddit, this is where things get interesting. They started calling when they realized I wasn't going to hand over my savings. But wait until you hear what Jake tried to do when he got desperate. Are you ready for this level of crazy? Jake started calling daily by mid-January. At first, the calls were still somewhat polite, just checking on the money transfer, wondering about the delay. But when I kept giving vague answers about bank complications and processing times, his tone shifted real quick. Look, we're running out of time here, he said during one call. The mortgage company needs payment by the end of January or we're looking at foreclosure proceedings. This isn't a joke anymore. I played dumb, told him I was working on it, that these things take time, but inside, I was laughing. They'd created this whole crisis by counting my money before they had it, and now reality was biting them in the rear. Sarah started texting me constantly, sending pictures of the kids looking sad, trying to guilt me with messages about how they might have to change schools if they lost the house. Real emotional manipulation tactics that probably would have worked on the old me, but the old me was gone. By February, I'd already given my 2 weeks notice at work, found a tenant to sublet my apartment, and had my moving truck booked. The job in Colorado was starting in March, and I couldn't wait to disappear like smoke. That's when Jake showed up at my apartment unannounced. I'm packing boxes, music playing, actually feeling excited about my new life, when there's this aggressive pounding on my door. Look through the peephole and there's my brother looking like he hasn't slept in days. Open up! We need to talk! He's yelling through the door. I cracked it open just enough to see his face. Dude looked rough, unshaven, eyes all red and crazy, wearing the same Carhartt jacket he'd had on for probably 3 days straight. Where's the money? He demands, trying to push past me into the apartment. I blocked him with my body, keeping the door mostly closed. What money, Jake? Don't play. Games with me. You promised us that money and we need it now. The neighbors were starting to peek out their doors, watching the drama unfold like it was reality TV. Mrs. Peterson from next door was recording with her iPhone, probably thinking she was getting content for TikTok. I never promised you anything, I said calmly. You told me I should give you my savings. I never agreed to that. Jake's face turned redder than a stop sign. He started yelling about family obligations, about how I was ruining his kids' lives, about what a selfish person I was. The whole time I just stood there watching him have this complete meltdown. You know what your problem is? He screamed, pointing his finger in my face. You're jealous. Jealous that I have a real life with a wife and kids while you're just a lonely nurse who's going to die alone. That stung a little, not gonna lie. But then I remembered something my favorite patient at the hospital once told me. Honey, people who try to tear you down are usually standing in a hole they dug themselves. Jake, I said, my voice steady as a rock, your financial problems aren't my emergency. I worked for that money, I saved that money, and I'm keeping that money. End of story. He tried one more time to push past me, but I just stepped back and shut the door. He pounded on it for another 5 minutes, yelling threats about how I'd regret this, how the family would never forgive me, all kinds of dramatic nonsense. Eventually he left, but not before keying my car in the parking lot. Real mature, right? The calls and texts escalated after that. Mom started blowing up my phone, crying about how I was tearing the family apart. Dad sent these long, disappointed voicemails about respect and family values. Aunt Linda even got involved, leaving messages about how ashamed she was of me. But you know what? Each angry call just confirmed I was making the right choice. I changed my phone number 2 weeks before I moved, didn't tell any of them where I was going, just vanished like a magician's assistant. The hospital forwarded my last paycheck to a P.O. box, and I was done with that chapter of my life. Colorado was like stepping into a whole new world. The job was amazing. Better pay, better hours, better coworkers who actually respected me. I found a cute apartment in a mountain town where people minded their own business and appreciated good neighbors. For 3 months, life was peaceful. I was hiking on weekends, made friends with some nurses at work, even started dating a nice guy named Marcus who owned a local bike shop. For the first time in years, I felt genuinely happy. Then my old phone number started getting messages. I'd kept the old phone, just turned off in case of real emergencies. One day, I turned it on to check if there was anything important, and boom, 17 voicemails from Jake, 12 from Sarah, 6 from Mom, and a bunch of texts I didn't even want to read. The first few voicemails were still angry, demanding I call back, threatening to report me to my nursing board for abandoning family, which made no sense, but desperation makes people stupid. But as the messages got more recent, the tone changed completely. Jake's voice was shaky, almost crying. Please call me back. We lost the house. The kids are staying with Sarah's mom, but it's temporary. We need help. I'm sorry about what I said, okay? Just call me back. Sarah's messages were even more pathetic. I know you're mad at us, but think about the kids. They're asking about Auntie all the time. We made mistakes, but we're family. Please don't abandon us. Mom's voicemails were the worst, full of guilt trips about Christian forgiveness and family bonds, but also admitting they'd been wrong to pressure me. Too little, too late, if you ask me. The texts were a goldmine of desperation. Jake, banks, seized everything. Living in motel, kids scared. Please help. Sarah, found your old apartment empty. Where did you go? We need to talk. Mom, your brother is having a breakdown. Whatever happened, we can fix this. Call me. But the one that really got me was from Dad, who'd barely said 2 words to me my whole life. Daughter, I was wrong. Your brother made poor choices. Don't punish the children for our mistakes. They love their aunt. Update. The final update is coming up, and let me tell you, their desperation reached levels I never could have imagined. But here's what I want to know from you all. Should I have felt bad for them at this point, or was I right to stay strong? Because what happened next really tested my resolve. I sat in my new living room, looking out at the Rocky Mountains, listening to these voicemails on speaker. Marcus was making us dinner in the kitchen, this amazing guy who'd never once questioned my decision to start fresh, who supported my dreams of eventually opening my own medical practice. And for a split second, I felt guilty. These were people I'd grown up with, shared holidays with, people who'd been in my life forever. The kids really were innocent in all this. But then I remembered Christmas Eve, remembered being called worthless, remembered how they'd planned to manipulate me, how they'd already spent money they didn't have because they assumed I'd just roll over and give them whatever they wanted. I deleted every message without responding. 2 weeks later, Aunt Linda somehow tracked down my new number. No idea how she managed that, but she called me at work, which was seriously crossing a line. Listen here, young lady, she started, using that tone that used to make me shrink as a kid. I don't know what's gotten into you, but this family is falling apart because of your selfishness. I was in the break room at the hospital just trying to eat my sandwich in peace, but something about her entitled tone just flipped a switch in me. Aunt Linda, I said, my voice calm but firm, let me explain something to you. I am not responsible for Jake's financial decisions. I am not responsible for him promising money he didn't have, and I am definitely not responsible for fixing problems created by adults who should know better. She tried to interrupt, but I wasn't done. You all decided I was worthless because I don't have a husband and kids. Well, guess what? This worthless woman has built a great life for herself, and I'm not going to let any of you tear it down again. But the children, she started, children have 2 parents who made bad choices. Maybe instead of calling me, you should be asking Jake and Sarah what their plan is to fix their own mess. I hung up and blocked her number too. Marcus asked me that night if I was okay, said I seemed stressed, so I told him the whole story. The Christmas confrontation, the guilt trips, the attempts to steal my savings, everything. I was nervous about how he'd react, wondering if he'd think I was heartless. Instead, he just shook his head and said, sounds like you dodged a bullet by getting away from those people. Family or not, nobody has the right to treat you like that. That's when I knew I'd found someone who actually got it. Spring turned into summer, and the messages kept coming but less frequently. Jake got a job at a warehouse. Sarah went back to work part-time, and they moved into a small rental house across town from where they used to live. Mom would send updates like I cared, probably hoping I'd feel bad and send money. But here's the thing. I was thriving, got promoted to charge. Nurse, started taking night classes for my nurse practitioner degree, and Marcus and I moved in together. My savings account was growing again, this time for a house with a mountain view and a garden where I could grow my own vegetables. In October, I got a Facebook friend request from my nephew, Jake's oldest son. He was 14 now, old enough to have his own social media. For a second, I considered accepting it, but then I realized it was probably just another manipulation tactic from his parents. I ignored it. By December, exactly 1 year after the Christmas from hell, I was planning my own Christmas celebration. Marcus and I invited his family over, along with some friends from work and our hiking group, real people who cared about me as a person, not as a source of emergency funding. We decorated our apartment with lights that reflected off the snow-covered peaks outside our window. I made homemade cookies, Marcus grilled steaks on our little balcony despite the cold, and everyone brought something to share. It was the kind of Christmas I'd always dreamed of, warm, genuine, full of people who actually wanted to be there. Christmas morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls from my old family. Apparently, Jake had been laid off from the warehouse job, Sarah was sick and couldn't work, and they were facing eviction again. Mom's voicemail was particularly dramatic, talking about how this was God's way of testing our family bonds. I listened to exactly 30 seconds of the first message, then turned off the phone and put it in a drawer. Marcus made us breakfast while I opened my presents. Real presents from people who'd actually thought about what I might like. A new hiking backpack, some books I'd mentioned wanting to read, a gift certificate for a massage at the spa in town. Any regrets? Marcus asked as we sat by our little Christmas tree, drinking coffee and watching the snow fall. I thought about it for a minute, really considered if there was any part of me that missed my old life or felt guilty about cutting off my family. None, I said, and meant it completely. The truth is, they never loved me for who I was. They loved what they thought I could do for them. The moment I became inconvenient to their plans, they showed me exactly how they really felt. These days, I'm planning to buy that house I always wanted, a cute little place with mountain views and room for the dog Marcus and I are planning to adopt. I'm 6 months away from finishing my nurse practitioner degree, and I've got interviews lined up at clinics that would let me help people who actually appreciate medical care. My phone doesn't ring with guilt trips anymore. My weekends are filled with hiking, biking, and hanging out with people who think I'm pretty awesome just as I am. I sleep great at night knowing I made the right choice. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd given them the money. They probably would have blown through it in 6 months and come back asking for more. I'd still be stuck in that tiny apartment, working double shifts to rebuild my savings, listening to them complain about how I wasn't doing enough to help. Instead, I'm living proof that sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is walk away from people who don't value you, even if they're family, maybe especially if they're family. The last voicemail I got was from Jake about 2 months ago. His voice was different, not angry or desperate, just tired. He said he'd finally realized what they'd done to me was wrong, that he was sorry, and that he hoped someday I could forgive them. I deleted it without finishing it. Some bridges are supposed to burn. And sometimes, walking away from the ashes is the only way to find out who you really are when you're not constantly trying to prove your worth to people who'll never see it. My name is on the deed to my new house now. I look out my kitchen window every morning at mountains that remind me how big the world is, how many possibilities exist beyond the small thinking of small people. I'm not worthless. I never was. And now I live every day proving it to the only person whose opinion actually matters, myself. The phone calls stopped completely 3 weeks ago. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that they've given up on me and are dealing with their problems on their own, like adults should have been doing all along. And you know what? I'm not even angry anymore. I'm grateful. They gave me the push I needed to build the life I actually wanted instead of the life I thought I was supposed to want. Best Christmas gift ever, honestly.